KANE has been destroying the entire WWE roster for over 20 years. I think it's going to continue. Hi, welcome to the Suplex Siblings web series, where we talk about all things entertainment, mostly in the sports entertainment realm, but entertainment in general. I'm Chris.
I'm Chrislyn. And before we get into the topic, last week's video mysteriously vanished, and I am actively working to get it back up. So
Apologies.
whether you saw it or didn't see it, you can see the most important part of that entire video up on our Instagram at Suplex Siblings, if I do say so myself.
That's at Suplex Siblings. No space, no underline, no underscore, no dash, no numbers, just at Suplex Siblings.
Thank you, Mr. Radio Voice Man.
Yes.
Now, on to the topic at hand, the Big Red Machine, the Devil's Favorite Demon, Corporate KANE,
Hey.
mayor of
Knox County.
yes, wherever he's mayor of that area of the world. Previously, long, billowing, dark, curly locks. Now
ginger, bald man.
lack thereof. There's a lot of nothing happening up there. But big fan.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think the best way to start this is really just starting from the beginning, you know? His debut alone, 1997, the first ever Hell in a Cell match. He came out, he literally walked into hell before it was cool, Brock Lesnar, okay? Yeah. Literally ripping the door to the cell off and then tombstoning the Undertaker. That's iconic. Everyone remembers it. This is great. It's amazing.
I think what's cool about his character is that he's always been very consistent, and a lot of people will disagree with that because of his not most recent run, because he is back to being himself,
unmatched
you know.
King.
But yeah, previously Corporate KANE in particular, I think a lot of people would argue that he was no longer KANE. I would disagree. I think he's always been a very consistent character in that he always displays this certain level of unpredictability.
Right. And
his presence has never changed.
Right.
Now, was I a fan of that version of KANE? Absolutely not. Not fun.
But I mean, in the defense of that, you know, he was a heel at the time. So it kind of makes sense. Maybe he's just that good. I honestly think he is very underrated in terms of his acting capability.
100%, because no matter what role he's playing, you believe him. Right. And I think that when he first showed up, you know, he showed up there. It's this daunting presence, you know, squaring off with the Undertaker of all people. Yeah. You know, I think that kind of set the tone, and it was the perfect way for them to write his story, to write that first chapter of his story, and to say this is this guy, because then from then on to now, I think he's like cemented this legacy that's like, you don't mess with KANE.
He's KANE.
You can't. He shows up, you see that fire blazing, and you're gonna run for your life, because or else you're dead.
Or else you're gonna get electrocuted, Shane.
That too. That too.
And you know, I think the biggest complaint a lot of people have is the unmasking of KANE. But I think when you look at the timeline, first of all, KANE has always been amazing at returns. He's returned how many times from injuries and, you know, storyline moments. Whenever he returns, everyone loves it.
Yeah. You
know, it doesn't matter when, where, how.
I think he's just one of those superstars, though, that you can't help but just love him.
Yeah.
Because he's an icon.
Right.
I mean, he's a legend, and I think that even those within the audience who have negative opinions about certain stages within his career, I think even they would agree that I mean, just simply put, he's a legend.
Yeah.
He just is. Like, you can't have the WWE without KANE.
Exactly.
I mean, think back to when we were kids. I mean, tiny children. It's iconic. I remember that mask.
Right, and that's really where, for me, I mostly remember his run when he was unmasked. I mean, when you look at the timeline of his career, he was unmasked for most of his career.
That's very true.
From 2003 to 2010, he was unmasked. Actually, 2003 to 2011, sorry. He came back in 2011, late 2011, with a mask. That's, what, 8 years where he didn't have the mask? He had the mask on from 1997 to 2003, that's 6 years, then, you know, on and off from when he got the mask back to now. So it's just kind of been an on and off since then, but he didn't have the mask for the longest time. I think the biggest thing with the mask is, with the mask, there was a level of unpredictability. You didn't know what he was thinking, you didn't know what he was doing. It was terrifying, you know?
Yeah.
But when he took the mask off, it's just like, this guy has nothing to lose. He's going on a rampage. And when he did take the mask off, that was kind of a peak in his career, because he was opening and closing Raw basically every week. He was the main event. Even though he wasn't the champion, he was the guy at the time.
I think his character, the reason why he's always been so unique, is that he kind of embodies the idea that less is more.
Right.
Meaning, if you think back to, I mean, think about all of the most iconic villains in film or TV, whatever. Less is always more. When you have something, they have a defining characteristic. They don't have to put on all of these theatrics, unless, you know, of course you have the Joker and characters like that, which that is their defining characteristic, is or his madness. But, and the look. But with KANE, he kind of has always embodied that simplicity, in that his presence makes him a dominant force.
Right.
He doesn't have to tell you anything. He doesn't have to add any flair to his character. He walks into a room and you already believe that he's the scariest guy there. And I think that that's kind of a testament to not only him himself, but the creative team and the creative scope of where they kind of drew, what they drew from to create the character, because there's so much simplicity in his character, and that's what makes him so terrifying.
And I think a lot of what happened, or a lot of what helped, if you think about it, that character, it would not get over now. Like, if it was just created now, it wouldn't. And I think a lot of that, honestly, has to do with the fact that they're not doing pyro now. With KANE, I think the pyro at the beginning of his entrance, that alone kind of sets the mood for the entire evening.
Well, because I mean, that's a part of his character. If you think about
flames.
I mean, take characters like Ric Flair. Part of his character was his costume, his robe. And so I think about KANE, part of his character was the fire, because
and
that
you know,
just...
where I was getting with that, though, you know, his whole character development, his whole storyline was, you know, he was burned in a fire as a kid. He's terrified of fire.
Yeah.
He's conquered his greatest fear, basically. He's controlling it.
Yeah.
That's what makes him terrifying. That's what makes him scary.
You know, what's so fascinating to me is, like, as much as, I mean, there are pros and cons to the Attitude Era and to you know, every single era within the WWE. There are pros and cons to it. But I look back to like when he arrived in that era of sports entertainment. I think the character development was so much more complex in a weird way back then, because, I mean, that kind of a storyline, that's so well thought out. That he has a backstory, and
his whole career of a storyline. And
I think a lot of the characters around that time, like, they all had there was something about them that made you believe that they're this way because of this, and we don't see that as often today. No. And so I think that's probably why, to your point, it probably wouldn't succeed, is because I think we're kind of in that age of, like, everything needs to be digestible, and so everything has to be simple, you know?
But too simple.
Yeah, like, simplified to the point where
there's no depth to it.
You know,
it's just there. There's no, don't ask questions.
Question it. Like, it just is.
It's just a thing.
You know, and so I think that's where a lot of, it's steadily improving, but I think, you know, mid 2000s, early 2010s, it was really it took a hit.
Yeah,
in terms of
look at it this way.
and character development.
This is a really weird comparison that I actually just thought of. The best thing going in sports entertainment right now is Becky Lynch. She has a big character arc, big story development. It's almost similar to the KANE story arc.
I think that's because
there's a backstory.
Although, like we just said, you know, the simplicity and the digestibility is what they're creating and what people are after. I think what we crave as an audience is a compelling story. No matter what your reason for watching wrestling, you're there for a story.
Right.
And so I think that's why KANE will always be a legend, and that's why Becky will be a legend, just because you can create a superstar within the simplicity of, you know, the instant gratification of just, oh, so it is what it is, whatever. But I don't think you can create like this lasting phenom. Yeah. You know, this level of greatness that a good quality story can create.
And I think a lot of that, like you were saying, because of how complex it was at the time, just when KANE showed up, you know, he was like this emotionless just monster. You know, he was this the big red machine. He just didn't care. He was there to destroy everyone. Paul Bearer ends up, you know, basically ditching him. Like they had a whole storyline with that. KANE, you know, his storyline, he had KANE's Night of Destruction. He didn't know what to do, so he was just going out there. He was just destroying everyone. That's all he knew how to do.
Yeah.
He didn't have anyone guiding him. Then he gets put in these quote unquote meaningless storylines, but at the same time, the meaningless storylines have big character development. You know, at this point, he didn't talk. You know, that was good at the time. Yeah. You know, it made sense. But then, you know, he had the weird storyline with X-Pac.
Yeah.
It was very, very strange, but at the same time, it made him seem human.
It's interesting because when I think back to, you know, the good old days with KANE, you know, I think about characters like Michael Myers and like these classic like horror movie villains, you know, and I always bring it up because it always makes me laugh when he locked Kelly in the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's so funny when you think about it, but at the same time when you're like, wow, like that's actually terrifying.
Yeah.
Could you imagine this guy coming? I mean, he's not small.
He's only 7 feet tall, 320
pounds. He's a massive
pounds.
human coming in, you know, with the colors of villainy, you know, red and black, and this mask, and just terrorizing people, you know, and I think they have here and there kind of destroyed the mystique and like the daunting nature of his character with, I mean, you know, with AJ and things like that.
And that
you know,
was
it kind
weird.
Of,
yeah.
They have some awkward,
strange.
but I think every character has gone through that within the WWE. The only reason it sticks out with KANE is because we know that's not right.
Yeah, that's not KANE.
You know, but I don't think those are defining moments in his career.
But at the same time, you know, I honestly think that with the AJ thing, they were trying to recreate the X-Pac feud. Because, you know, the X-Pac feud was about Tori, KANE's girlfriend, whatever. It's messed up, but at the same time, that was the best thing for KANE at the moment because, I mean, it's a different time period. You know, at that time, everyone got beat up.
Yeah.
You know, KANE chokeslamming Tori is iconic for his character.
Yeah, and I think that's another testament to
him
being like a classic
right.
villain character because, I mean, that's just a diabolical thing to do, and I don't think. I mean, obviously, if that happened today, it would be a big problem. And I think even back then, that was wrong.
It's still messed up.
But I think at the time, the way that he was portrayed,
it made sense.
It made perfect sense.
And, you know, that's what's really strange is it almost felt like just they were constantly trying to get him over as a heel, but they couldn't because people loved him too much because look at... Like we said with Becky, they try to get her over as heel, but everyone related to her too much. They're like, she's in the right.
I think when it's really hard to boo a good storyteller. And I mean, The Undertaker is another good example. Like, you have the two of them, KANE and The Undertaker, nobody's booing them. You can't do it because they're just legendary characters. There will never be another wrestler or character anywhere in any capacity that will have the same effect that they had, you know, within a performing arts setting, because they changed the game, you know. And I think KANE showing up the way that he did, he created a new landscape, you know.
And I do want to talk about the fact that we mentioned his size. He's 7 foot tall, 320 pounds. The guy would run around the ring. He'd jump off the ropes. He'd do everything.
Agility is off the charts.
Phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
And you know, he did lean out a bit, like right before he took off the mask and everything. But at the same time, he was still a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you know, when he took off the mask, I think that was kind of when they decided, hey, we're going to kind of put him in a main event spot, because at that point, that's when they kind of started getting him to talk a bit. You know, I think getting him to talk, as much as people complain about it, I think that kind of really helped his character, because if he didn't, you know, have some sort of change, it would have gotten boring.
Right. It's like, it was just an evolution of his character, and I don't think it changed his character really at all.
It was just
I think
an evolution,
it just,
like
it gave him a new arc.
The fact that it was evolved through a storyline, it wasn't just, oh, by the way, he's talking now. It was literally just gradually built up, and then, you know, his whole career has been, something gets built up, you know, he starts to trust someone, they stab him in the back, and then he destroys them. That was basically his whole career from that point.
Yeah.
When he took off the mask, you know, it got to the point where he was just like, I'm not going to let anyone stab me in the back anymore. I'm just going to destroy everyone before they can stab me in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really where the unmasked KANE was unstoppable.
Yeah.
People will agree, people will disagree, whatever. But like I said, he was opening and closing Raw. He was the main event guy, basically. Wasn't even the champion. You know, it took him another 7 years after that before he was the champion.
Right.
Obviously, he was champion in between, but not the champion, world champion. Which
that's
a big deal.
Think about that too, because that's something that's fascinating. When a character, a wrestler, hasn't achieved the ultimate goal.
Well, and you know, he was WWF champion, but it was only for a day.
Yeah, but think about that. Like, people, we have this, you know, preconceived notion that, like, okay, so the way to solidify your legacy here is to get that, you know, and to have an incredible reign. And one day, you know what I mean? And then, you know, here and there he had ups and downs, but think about the records that he holds. Think about how, like we said before, no one will ever be able to achieve what KANE has. There will never be another KANE character. And so I think it just goes to show that even if you don't have to snatch the gold and, you know, have a Seth Rollins run, you know, or anything like that to be a successful superstar and to tell a compelling story, because that's, at the end of the day, that's their job and that's what we want. That's what they're doing for us, telling a story. And I think he is a character that is just perfect at that.
And I think, honestly, the only other person that's really like that now is, let's say, Aleister Black.
I agree.
He doesn't need the championship. The championship was great on him, the NXT championship. But at the same time, right now, he doesn't need it.
I agree 100%, and I think that he is such a quality storyteller, and that he understands the concept of evolution within his character without selling out.
Right.
You know, and becoming something that he's not. And you know, sometimes, you know, you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes those guys come up to the main roster and they're like, now you're the fashion police. You know what I mean? And that happens.
And you just kind of have to run with it.
I commend them. It's nothing against them. But I think that with characters like KANE, Aleister Black, and that, because that is still something that is hard to digest for a lot of people. Yeah. Because that kind of, like, I've always been drawn to darker themes within storytelling. So that's compelling to me. That's interesting. I like to see that, and, you know, to watch them, whether good or bad, you know, on either side. It's interesting to watch them and to see, why are they like this? It creates questions, so the story kind of tells itself. You know, you kind of have to and there's an air of mystery that makes it exciting.
And I think that's where, you know, the Mask of KANE just kind of amplifies it. Because, like you said, it's the air of mystery. You don't know what he's thinking.
Exactly.
You can't read his face.
And I think that's what's scary, you know, about a character like that.
You know, I remember just the other day, well, just yesterday actually, I was watching this clip of when he returned in 2000. You know, he came out, he destroyed DX, he destroyed like a bunch of people. He had a match a couple days later on SmackDown. It was a 2-on-1 handicap match, and you know, he's literally just holding his own against the champion Triple H at the time. Mm-hmm. He's holding his own against him and X-Pac. These guys were like, they were the top of the company at the time. Mm-hmm. DX was running the show. That's terrifying. He literally takes a chair shot, doesn't even phase him. Like,
exactly.
He turns around, you just see the mask.
Royal Rumble. Yeah. I mean, before Roman Reigns, you know,
right.
I mean,
11 people in one night.
Yeah, like that. He set that record, and that was something that's. It's no small feat.
No.
You know, and I think everybody recognizes
for 13 years. Too.
And he held that record for that long, and you know, a Royal Rumble match is. There's a lot going on. That's a lot of bodies. That's a lot of time for him to have sustained himself within that match. But then you
especially
think about
his size,
exactly,
like we were saying.
Exactly.
You know, he went for almost an hour, and he's the biggest guy in the match.
And then think about it took someone like Roman Reigns, who was top dog,
at the time,
to you know to defeat that streak, basically, you know, and to create a new streak there. And I think that's an interesting testament to Kane's status within the company and how important he is to the company and to the fans.
Well, and I mean, now, you know, he has, I think he's still got the record for all-time eliminations. Mm-hmm. At least that's what I remember from the last year or so, unless someone just broke it and I just didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And, you know, actually, Braun Strowman just beat Roman Reigns' record of eliminations. So it's a big deal.
It is.
Because, you know, Kane is obviously a big, powerful guy sort of thing. But at the same time, like we were saying, it took
how
13
long it
years.
Took, yeah. For somebody to be on that level.
And then, you know, it took someone like Braun Strowman to surpass the next guys. Mm. So that just kind of, it sets the bar, really. Yeah. I honestly think that Kane has set the bar for big men in the company.
And I think it's that's why it kind of upsets me a little bit when I see characters like the Authors of Pain and stuff like that, where they have that thing about them, you know, that presence, that daunting presence that's kind of turned into a joke. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I hate seeing that.
That's disappointing.
The Big Show, you know, and I like it's just
and you know, Big Show. I think that's an interesting one because I mean, look at Big Show and Kane. How do you stop that?
Realistically, you can't.
You can't. Yeah.
You're dead. You're done. You got to roll over. Sorry, you lose.
But then, you know, with the Big Show, it's topic for another day. But at the same time, the Big Show, he's just a very interesting character because you could tell he's a very fun person.
Yeah.
Like he just wants to entertain people. But at the same time, like you were saying, it's kind of annoying to see someone who's supposed to be a dominant force made into a joke. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Authors of Pain, perfect example. What they've done with Kane before,
you know, and I think what's interesting with Kane is that, masked or not, he's never had to turn into something else to be dominant. And I think that this is the problem that I've been having the way that they've been booking Finn Balor. I love Finn Balor so much. A favorite of mine since he appeared. Love him. And I love Finn Balor as Finn Balor, but what I don't appreciate and don't like is that he has to turn into the demon in order to be taken seriously.
And they've taken that to the next level because, you know, in NXT, the demon was just kind of like an amplified version of Finn Balor where he was just like, you know, this is a big match thing. Yeah, alter ego. But on the main roster, they've made it into, well, he's nothing without the demon.
Exactly, and I think that's where they go wrong with his character, you know what I mean? And whereas with Kane, it was always like, he's Kane. Mm-hmm. He's just Kane. He can do that. And I think that Finn Balor is a character that he's Finn Balor. He can do it.
I think that's kind of with, let's say, Baron Corbin. Mm-hmm. You know, with the Lone Wolf gimmick, it started out that way. Mm-hmm. But then it kind of slowly faded and changed because it got stale. Mm-hmm. When you look at Kane, like we've said, he was always evolving. He's always doing something new, but staying Kane.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. You know, the character has to evolve, but stay the same. You know, Chris Jericho, whatever. But there's just something about certain characters.
And I think
too.
that because Kane took the time to develop his character, I mean, for years, like you'd said before, for years he had that mask on his face. You know, he took that time to solidify, this is my character, this is who I am. We got to know this character.
And I think that the unmasking adds a whole new depth because no one expects him to unmask.
So then when you have somebody like Baron Corbin, we haven't had this time to get to know his character, and he hadn't fully developed it, so of course it's going to be more challenging for us to just believe. We'll just take your word for it that you're a dominant person and that you're
even though you keep losing.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that it's all in the storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, and Kane's he's just a quality storyteller.
And you know, I just the last thing I really wanted to point out was that choke slam. Though, I'm sorry, no one does a choke slam like Kane.
You're right. You're not wrong.
You want to talk about theatrics? Kane's choke slam. Anybody watching this, honestly, watch just a compilation, a highlight reel of Kane's choke slams because it's amazing because it's believable. You know, you see other people doing these moves. Even like I love Undertaker, but at the same time, his choke slam doesn't even compare to Kane.
Because he has his own thing. It's so different.
It's different. Well,
and like
the way
their characters are so different.
Right,
so.
and when you look at Kane's choke slam, it's look at Kane or Undertaker's tombstone. You know, it's
different.
Their signature
thing.
thing.
And that's the thing is like the tombstone. That's Undertaker.
Yeah,
like you
and
believe that.
It's theatric throughout.
That. Yeah, and then with the choke slam with Kane, that's Kane.
With Kane, with his choke slam, the entire time that he's executing the move from the start to finish, it's a theatric thing. It's not just, oh hey, here's one theatric thing, then the choke slam.
Exactly.
He's literally selling the grab, he's selling the movement, he's selling the lift, he's selling the slam.
Right.
You know, it's
and
not just one or the other.
What sets it apart, what makes it so different for him as opposed to anybody else, and The Undertaker is excellent at this himself as well, but it's all in the subtleties, like in the moments of pause, when he's not even doing anything, you know what I mean? When he pauses to look in their eyes first, that is telling a story. That is giving us, it's helping us to believe, like, to fear for our lives, basically.
It's
like,
scary,
this man is terrifying, because he's taking that pause to be like, I've got nothing to lose, but you do.
Yeah.
You're going down
I've got you by the throat, and what are you going to do?
That's a storyteller. When you can just tell a story just with a stare, he's just a solid character. He really just embodies who he is, and I think that's phenomenal.
And you know, the last thing is just his promo skills.
Excellent.
You know,
Excellent.
I watched the promo that he did after he had cashed in Money in the Bank the same night in 2010 to win the World Championship. His promo was phenomenal.
Fire. No
Literally,
pun intended.
And I think that's a really underrated quality because, you know, you look at Masked Kane, didn't talk much, like we were saying. He eventually started talking. That's, you know, I'm not going to say that he wasn't good before, but at the same time, you know, that's character development.
Yeah.
Because he got to the point where he wasn't saying anything he's cutting top guy promos. And he's the top guy.
Yep.
How many times did he fight Undertaker at WrestleMania? You know, he had all of these moments in his career without even needing the championship. When he won the championship, it just kind of solidified Kane as Kane.
And I think what's important with Kane is to really just look at his individual career. Because I think too often, everybody gets in the habit of like, oh, The Undertaker and Kane, this, The Undertaker and Big Show, or Kane and Big Show, all this. Yeah, those and instead of looking at his individual career and his individual character, because he's such a standout.
Right.
And I think too many people, they look to the Brothers of Destruction, and of course, The Undertaker he's the most iconic character to ever come out of the WWE. That's just, we know that. That's just a given. But I think that even he would say that the Brothers of Destruction thing, that is not the extent of Kane's character or his capabilities or his career. And I think a lot of people stick to that and be like, oh, he just rides the Undertaker's coattails, or he's the best when he's with the Undertaker. I think they bring out the best in each other for sure, but I think Kane's career as an individual competitor speaks for itself and should be taken a look at. I think it would do everybody good to just go back and watch, because I think we all know he's an amazing competitor, just to watch it.
That's really what made me want to do this this video in particular. Is just one day, just a couple days ago, I was like, I'm just gonna go back and watch some old school Kane stuff, and I got into it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Isn't it amazing how something that is, it has withstood the test of time. Like, it still brings you entertainment and joy looking back to something that took place
like I
20
said,
years ago.
The entrance alone, anybody who wants to, go back and watch Kane's return in the year 2000, came out with Paul Bearer. It was a big surprise because he was supposedly taken back to the mental institution. When I first watched that, and I've watched it a million times now because it's just that good. When I first watched that, I got goosebumps because when you're watching it, you see Paul Bearer coming out, the crowd's freaking out, Kane's music hits, there goes the pyro. It's just like, this is intense. This is happening.
There's a mood. There's a certain atmosphere, and that's like irreplaceable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's so rare. And I think nowadays, because we are so used to, we have so many superstars on the roster. You know what I mean? We're kind of accustomed to like, oh, yay, exciting. There's nothing quite like that moment when it's, cause even recently, when he just recently returned, it was
great.
What?
The crowd reacted. It wasn't as big of a reaction because they're kind of just like, oh, it's Kane.
Watching, you know what I mean? It's still, even though like he's the same guy I've seen my whole life pretty much, but it's like he shows up and it feels like something new is going to happen because he just showed up, and it's rare. It's not something you get every day. There are so many superstars who return at the Royal Rumble every year, and it's, yes, you get that nostalgic feeling, but there's nothing like Kane,
right?
Or guys like the Undertaker.
Kane, Undertaker, Chris Jericho. They're in like their own league of, when they show up, it's a big deal.
Yeah, because
something's
going down. The pages are turning.
Right.
We're gonna see something different right now.
And even for a while, that's kind of what was happening with Brock Lesnar. Like right around the time when he broke Undertaker's streak, that's kind of what his character was at. I think that was kind of like the shock factor with him, was when he would show up, something big was going to happen.
But
now it's kind of stale.
Yeah, he plateaued.
Yeah, he plateaued hard. Very much so. Or if you look at when Goldberg came back, big deal. When he won the title, it was a big deal because everyone knew that it was going to be Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. Right. But at the same time, sure, Goldberg's an old man, but he's Goldberg.
It did deliver, because when he beat Brock Lesnar in 30 seconds, that was just, it delivered. Yeah, you got what you wanted from that, and it was good. And I think that, there are just certain people who just, they have that effect where when they show up, it's different than any other. Yeah. It's so different.
Well, look at with the corporate Kane thing, when Seth Rollins was champion and was feuding with Brock Lesnar, who was the one that took down the Beast?
Yeah,
Kane.
exactly.
People can joke all they want, but they did that right. It wouldn't make sense for J&J Security to be the one to bring him down.
Oh my God.
Kane is the one who choke slams Brock Lesnar. That's iconic. When Kane shows up, something's going down, something big is going to happen. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
I think that's really the selling point. That's really the bookend, is when Kane shows up, it's got to be good.
Yeah, I agree. It's just good. He's just good. He's too good. He's good at his job.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Thanks.
If you like it, subscribe, follow us
at
Suplex Siblings.
Yeah.
On
Do
Twitter
all of the things.
and Instagram.
Give it a thumbs up. Do all of that stuff, because
tell your friends.
That's helpful.
Yeah, tell your friends about us.
If you enjoyed listening to Two Nerds Talk, I'm sure you know somebody else who will also enjoy it.
Yeah.
Spread the joy. It's almost Christmas time. It's holiday time. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all of that. Share. Give the gift of gab.
Yeah.
Make friends.
That. Thanks.